Can you explain, sir, why these kinds of things happen? What things? Let's see. If you read the Shahnameh of Ferdowsi, the author mentioned an area called Ariana, yes, and its cities and palaces. He mentioned Ariana's palaces like Kabulistan, Tukharistan, Zabulistan, Ghazni, Ghor, Bamiyan. All of these exist in present day Afghanistan, not Iran. And he has written the names of two large kingdoms, which are Ariana and Paros, which is Persia, like two different countries. Yeah, he kind of may have done that. Yeah, and he also said that people of Ariana speak the Dari language, and the people of Pars speak Persian language, Parsi language. In most of the poems, is written like Mardas' story, stanza 9, whatever that is. I don't know how to read that. I used to be able to, but no longer. So in English, it says it's inappropriate for us to say Bivar 10,000 in Parsi language. It's better for us to say Daha Hazar 10,000 in the Dari language. According to this verses, Dari language was not the language of Pars, and the Parsi language is extinct by empires of Ariana. Yet both are the same language family, but different languages. Because of this, the king of Persia, Reza Shah Pahlavi, changed his country's name Persia to Iran, and the language name Dari to Persians, for making the history richer and richer. In the Shahnameh, the details are very clear. Okay, very interesting story you bring in. What's the deal with the Shahnameh? Right, the Shahnameh was written by Ferdowsi. It was written between about 980 AD to about 1010 AD, over a period of about 30 years. It was written by Ferdowsi. Now, when Ferdowsi started writing this book, the Shahnameh, the record of the kings of Persia, the record of the entire history of Persia, when he started writing this, the geopolitical entity in power in Persia, in the region, was the Samanid Empire, which was a Persian empire. But around the late 990s, maybe around 999 AD or somewhere around that time, the Samanid Empire was overthrown by a Turkic empire, the Ghaznavid Empire. You know, Mahmud of Ghazni, that guy, the Turk, who has a pretty dark history in India. We know that. So, uh, so the Ghaznavi Empire takes over from the Samanid Empire, and Mahmud of Ghazni kind of becomes the patron of of Ferdowsi. And then Ferdowsi continues writing the Shahnameh, and he concludes around 1010 AD. Now, when you have a patron who is this conqueror, a foreigner, a Turk, not a Persian, you will find that Mahmud of Ghazni would have been less interested in tales from Persian history. He would not have been interested in that. He would have been interested in self glorification. And he would have expected that the writer of the Shahnameh, Ferdowsi, would glorify him and the region he came from. And the region he came from was present day Afghanistan. He occupied Afghanistan. He was a foreigner, even in Afghanistan. He was a Turk. He was not Afghan. He was not Pashtun. He was a Turk. So, so you have to understand that the Shahnameh cannot be treated as a completely factual book. There was politics at the time that would have encouraged, let's say, Ferdowsi to kind of write things in a certain manner. But it's also true, like you say, that a lot of these places that he talks about are present day Afghanistan, not present day Persia. And that's just the way it is. So my point is, you cannot take uh, the Shahnameh as a completely historical, absolutely unquestionable historical text. Uh, and a lot of the stuff is kind of, look, I'll tell you what. Ferdowsi was not a big fan of the Arabs. He was not even a big fan of the Turks, but he had to operate under those circumstances. He was not even a Muslim, by the way, Ferdowsi. He did not write very nice things about the Arabs who conquered Persia. He wrote pretty sad things, about the condition that Persia was in under Arabic rule, and then all of that. So you have to understand there's layers of things over here. And if you look at the Shahnameh of Ferdowsi, he essentially, if you look at the origins of Persia mentioned in the Shahnameh, they're very interesting. Let's bring an English version of the Shahnameh on the screen and just take a look at what's written. A little bit of that. Where is the Shahnameh? The Shahnameh, the epic of kings. Let's make it like this. Okay, so it starts with the origin of Persia, essentially. And it talks about the first king, Kayumers, And what happens after that? Then you have Husheng and Tahumars. And after Tahumars, Takhta Jamshed, you have Jamshed. So Jamshed is Yamaksheta, Yama. It is Yama of the Rig Veda. Then, if we go further beyond that, there is Zahak. And Zahak is depicted as a dragon, a snake. And the person who destroys eventually Zahak is a person who is referred to as Faridun in this text. Faridun, right? Faridun, the person who Ferdowsi refers to as Faridun, was originally called Tretun in Persian. And Tretun is also called Aptya Tretun. And it is the same person as a so called minor divinity in the Rig Veda, which is Aptya Treta. And if you read the Rig Veda, it's kind of interesting because Aptya Treta is at times portrayed fighting the great serpent Vritra. And of course, it is Indra who destroys Vritra, but over here it is Treta in the Shahnameh who destroys this serpent, Zahak, who is an Arabic version of Vritra, and so on. So if you look at the original, if you look at the initial portion of the Shahnameh, it kind of mirrors the original texts of India, which tells you that there was a very deep, ancient, common origin of the Persians and the Indians, right? So it's like that. My point overall is to what you mentioned. You have to be careful in interpreting the Shahnameh. It is. It's a complicated text, and the way it was written, it was influenced by the politics of the time, and Ferdowsi had to kind of take special care to make his overlord Mahmud of Ghazni happy, to keep him happy, and for that he had to. It is alleged that Mahmud of Ghazni promised to give Ferdowsi one gold coin for each verse or something that he wrote in the Shahnameh. And to get that, obviously, he has to write things that make this king happy, right? So it could have influenced the way the Shahnameh was written. So it is not. It is. I mean, it is the oldest text in the Persian language that we have today, whether you call it Dari or whatever. Yeah, Dari. There are definitely two versions of Persian, very similar languages. One is the Persian that is spoken in Afghanistan, which is called Dari, and then you have the Persian language. There may be some dissimilarities, but overall they're part of the same language family, like you say. But so the Shahnameh is the only ancient text from Persia essentially that survives. Persia would have had lots of ancient texts, Zoroastrian texts, etc., which would have been destroyed by the Arabs when they conquered Persia. So Persia's downfall essentially started with the conquest of Alexander, which destroyed the Achaemenid Hachemonish Empire, and they took the Greeks took out all of the wealth from Parshapur, Persepolis. They melted all the gold, all the silver. They would have destroyed. They burned Parshapur, which would have burned all the books and all. So a lot of the ancient history of Persia is destroyed because of all of this, and that's why kind of the oldest text that is available for reference is the Shahnameh. But you have to be careful with reading it. You cannot interpret it literally. That's the point.